guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is highly requested. I'm also super excited to talk about it, and it's my 2.5 years off of hormonal contraception update. So I have so much to tell you all. If you haven't seen my first video that I did on this kind of topic, which was about how I came to the decision that I wanted to come off of hormonal contraception, how I went about doing that, and then also kind of like the first 6 months or so of being off hormonal contraception, then go check out that. The link is in the description box. But today's video, I want to talk about my experience. I want to chat about how long it really took, I think it took, for my hormones to settle, changes that happened with my skin, my body, changes to my mental health, and also how I prevent pregnancy, because obviously I am not looking to conceive right now. I'm not looking to have a baby at this point in my life. So yeah, there's a lot to cover. I'm going to try and keep it as short as I can. I guess the one thing I will say is I'm not a doctor, I'm not a health professional. This is just solely my experience with this, and it's really important. I'm a huge advocate that we as women make informed decisions about the things we do with our body. And I feel like for so long I thought the pill was my only option, and I've obviously over the last 2.5 years learned that it's not my option. And the more we talk about it, the more we share our experiences, the more we encourage other women to do the research, to speak to people, you know, we can just encourage people to make informed decisions, and that's what it's all about. So listen to people's experiences, listen to my experience, but please go away, do your research, speak to a health professional before you decide to make any decisions. So I guess the easiest thing to do with this video is to start where we left off. So we were about 6 months off of hormonal contraception. I was feeling massive improvements to my mental health in terms of my anxiety, in terms of my management. I spoke about feeling like I had like a cloud over me constantly. And that cloud is gone now. Yes, I do suffer quite badly with some anxiety anyway, and that is something that I'm managing and something I'm working through. But those moments of complete despair where I feel like I was completely out of control have gone, and I am so much happier. In the last 2 years, I've been so much more confident and happy, and I still vouch by the statement that it completely changed my life. So about those 6 months, anxiety was, I'd seen huge improvements in just self-confidence, social anxiety, and just not feeling like that black cloud anymore. And that has not changed the whole 2.5 years. That was something that stayed constant, and yes, that's why I stick by my decision. Skin wise, things started to change about, so the video update was about 6 months, and I'd probably say things started to change the end of 2019. So around November, December, I started getting some under the skin spots on my temples, and then they were under the skin and they were really stubborn. They were not going anywhere, and that actually, over kind of the course of early 2020 and then into the summer of 2020, I developed full-blown adult acne. Worse than I've ever had acne in my life, and I went on Roaccutane when I was 18 years old for acne, and obviously when I finished my course of Roaccutane I had perfect skin. When I went onto the pill, that didn't impact my skin. However, yeah, I did get full-blown adult acne throughout 2020, and it was something that was quite stressful for me and really impacted my confidence a lot. It came from up on my temples, and then it just came all the way down my cheeks. So I kind of assumed it was hormonal, and so I started doing a lot more research into balancing my hormones and trying to figure out if something in my body was unhappy. When I look back at it now, I do think, one, it was a combination of my hormones being out of control after so much time being kind of like suppressed and stuff. However, I do also think it was just, I think it was bound to happen. I think my body one, was out of work, and two, I just think it was like the after effects of coming off the pill. And I just wanted to mention the skin because I do not regret the decision I made at all. Yes, the skin was really hard and it challenged me in a different way. However, having better skin was not worth the mental stress I was under whilst on the pill. So I still stand by my decision, but I just wanted to mention it because I know, especially I went privately for my Roaccutane and it's not cheap. It costs a lot of money. It's a very intense drug, and if you have done that and you are debating coming off of your hormonal contraception, it's just to be aware that those changes in your hormones can bring that back. My skin now has pretty much made a full recovery and I'm super grateful for that. So it does get better. You've just got to ride it out. It's time, it's patience. I am going to plan on making a video solely on my skincare journey because I shared it quite a lot on Instagram and I want to tell you guys everything that I went through. But I just felt it was important to mention in this video because I definitely feel like it was down to obviously the hormonal changes, and I honestly feel like my body started to heal itself when it was ready. I feel like I couldn't do anything. I was doing everything that I could, but I think in the end I just had to ride it out. I also went to see a homeopath and did some supplements as well, so I think that was part of the journey. But yeah, I will speak about skin in a separate video to this because there's so much more into that. But yeah, that's kind of what happened with the skin, is it did freak out, and some people, I know that is quite common and other people don't have it, but it's just something to be aware of. So the other point is probably period length and cycle and PMS and stuff like that. So originally my cycles were really long, so they were regular, they were coming every month, but I was having like 38 to 40 day cycles. Now I know originally everyone says, oh, your cycle's meant to be 28 days, but it does completely vary for women, and it also can completely vary month to month depending on stress, depending on diet, depending on sleep. You know, there's so many things that can impact your cycle. But yeah, I was having these really long cycles, and I think the combination of the skin really prompted me to do some more research into my hormones, my female reproductive system, which is kind of sad because I probably, when I started learning everything, I was like, why don't they teach us this in school? Why don't they do that? Why did no one go through this with me when I was 16 years old, going to the doctors for my contraception? Anyway, so because of all these things, I started doing a lot more research. Now, I would recommend everyone do it the opposite way to me. Do your research first. However, when I started looking, I came across this book. It's called In the Flow. It's by Elisa Vitti. I hope I've said her name right. And as you can see, I've got so many markers in there because it was incredible. It's such a great book. I know there's so many other books out there as well that are similar to this, but this was the one that I read and it just opened my eyes. You know, there's so much information that we miss out on. It just taught me so much. It taught me about the 4 stages of my menstrual cycle. It taught me about how to eat for my menstrual cycle. It taught me how to exercise for my menstrual cycle. And most importantly, it spoke to me about the other options of birth control that didn't involve hormones. So I know some people have the coil, however I wasn't interested in having the coil. I really don't want to put anything in my body ever again because this is the best I've ever felt. Before I started reading the book, I was already tracking my cycles anyway. However, tracking your cycles is great, but unless you really know about ovulation and you kind of know how we get pregnant and when we can get pregnant, tracking your cycle is not going to do much for you. So this book was super educational and super helpful. I'm not going to go too much into the details and science because I really do think it's something that you guys should read for yourselves and learn about yourselves, but there really is such a small window that we can actually get pregnant in. And when I learned that, I was like, wow, we really don't need these invasive methods of birth control that just change so much about us. So that was a real game changer for me. The one thing I really loved about this book is that it covered so much around our hormones, what to do if your hormones are out of balance, how to exercise around the different phases of our cycle. And that was a big one for me, because when you're on the pill, when you're on contraception, you don't have those phases. You don't have those phases as clear cut as you do when you're off of hormonal contraception. So you can pretty much train maybe like the same the whole month through, and it won't have as much as an impact. However, one of the big changes I found when I was off of my hormonal contraception is just the sheer difference between the start of my cycle, the middle, and the end. So the start of your cycle is day one of your cycle starts from the first day of your period. So your period is technically the first section of your cycle, and that's obviously your menstrual phase where you bleed, and it can be anything up to 7 days. After this comes your follicular phase, where we've got our energy levels, our hormones are rising, we've got more energy, it's time to go really hard on those workouts. Then we hit ovulation, still energy's pretty high, and then the end phase, the luteal phase, is when everything kind of starts to slow down, you'll feel more tired, and you might not be able to give 100% to those workouts anymore. So the one thing it did for me is it gave me such a huge respect for my body to think, you know, Sophie, this isn't you, it's just your body right now. That's okay, take it easy for the next kind of couple weeks, and then we ramp it up in the next couple of weeks. It was such a great way for me to learn more about my body and respect it. The main sort of things I started doing after I read the book was being more aware of how I felt in the run up to my period, so kind of like the signs and symptoms. And I obviously now, after like 2 years of this, realised that I actually struggle quite badly with PMS. So as I'm coming up to the run up to my period, I definitely have to remind myself, Sophie, like, there's nothing wrong with you, everything's okay, it's just your hormones. And that's just such a comforting feeling for you to be like, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy, this is my body. And you can just remind yourself of that, and that's a luxury I did not have when I was on the pill. I literally just thought I was insane the whole time. So that's really nice, because you can just be a hell of a lot kinder to yourselves and not think that you've just completely lost the plot a couple weeks every single month. I also started taking note of how long my periods were and kind of what my periods looked like, which days were heavy, which days were light. You know, periods should have a beginning, middle, and an end. So you I keep touching my plant. They're usually heavier at the beginning, medium sort of flow in the middle, and then lighter towards the end. There's also signs about what to look out for in your period that can show you whether you might be lacking in some hormones or have too much of some hormones. So that's also super interesting. And it was also just a huge shock for me about just how much I didn't know about my body, and I think that's the most important part. So after a while of implementing some of the things in the book around food, around like seed cycling, around exercise, and taking some supplements and things, my cycles did actually go down to, they're around like between 28 and 32 days now, which is much better than 38 days. They do change when I'm super stressed, and that's something to be really aware of. And it's also something that's not, you know, really not worth it, is when you're getting to the point where it's impacting your menstrual cycle. Because the one thing that you learn from this book is that your menstrual cycle is one of the only indicators we get as women that our body is functioning in the way that it should be. And another thing it taught me is that all these things that we've just been told to live with, like really painful periods, really long periods, really heavy periods, acne, gut issues, those are signs that your body is not happy. They are not things that you have to live with. They are things, and they are your body telling you something's not right, and something's, I'm not happy, and please like figure out what it is. It won't always tell you what it is, but it's giving you the signs that something is wrong. So that's why I get so worried when I see people that have been like, I haven't had a period for a year, And it's like, whoa. And it's also crazy to know that, you know, if you are on hormonal contraception, you're never having a period, you're missing out on all of those vital pieces of information, you know. That's something that really shocked me. And I'm so in tune with my body now. I'm so in tune with my body just through learning about my cycle, respecting how I feel, learning and being aware of those signs of ovulation. That is one of the biggest things you'll learn if you go on to using some of the methods I'll talk about in a minute. So once you know about these things and you start being aware of these things, I feel like you just, it sounds so hippie, but you just feel like a greater connection to kind of your body. But obviously, all side effects, all symptoms aside, we obviously need to talk about what I do for birth control now. I use the fertility awareness method. So if you don't know much about fertility awareness methods, there's a couple ways you can do it. One is by tracking your basal body temperature, and there's devices that you can do that with. Secondly, it's by observing changes in your cervical mucus, which would show you a good sign that you are ovulating. And then thirdly, tracking all of this information in a chart or in an app, and then making sure that you completely avoid sex, or make sure that you're using protection during your fertile window. Another great page that I would recommend you follow on Instagram is Fertility Charting, and she speaks a lot about the symptothermal method, where it's a combination of kind of all those three things to be as effective as possible. And so that's what I do, and that is what I have been doing for the last 2.5 years, and so far it's absolutely fine. I've not had any concerns, I've not had any worries. It's just, the biggest thing is you just need to be informed, because if you're not informed and you're not aware of these things and the risks and the responsibility, because it is a responsibility, you do open yourself up to being vulnerable to falling pregnant, and that is something that you should really consider before you make a decision to come off of hormonal birth control. Of those things that requires time, patience. You can't rush it. It takes a while for your cycle to regulate. It takes you a while to learn the signs and symptoms. And remember, things can change month to month. Just because one thing was one way one month, it might be completely different the next month. However, all of that being said, I absolutely would not change a single thing. I am so happy that I made the decision I did, and I hope that this little insight gives you some hope, or gives you some, you know, inspiration that you don't have to suffer on birth control. And there's so much research and there's so many resources out there for you to learn from, for you to make informed decisions about your body. And yeah, I really hope that you found this useful, found it helpful, and here's to looking after ourselves and being happier, healthy humans. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.